Once we actually got through the negotiations, it turned out that we had something that was substantial, that was subject to review by everybody involved, and that has proven to be highly effective, even by the assessments of critics of the policy like the Israelis. They've said, yeah, this actually has worked. Iran's abided by the agreement. In fact, now they're suggesting, why don't we just stay here? It's worked so well. Despite the fact that they'd made almost the precise same argument they're making now about the final deal. But, you know, consistency is the hobgoblin of narrow minds.
Consistency is the hobgoblin of narrow minds. Another swipe at Israel taken by Obama the other day. Joining us now is Douglas Feith, a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, author of War and Decision Inside the Pentagon at the Dawn of the War on Terrorism. There's the book. And, of course, Douglas, you were Undersecretary of Defense from 01 to 05. Welcome aboard. Do you have any idea what he's talking about, making it sound, first of all, that Israel has changed its mind and Israel said Iran has abided by everything so far? I don't even know what he's talking about.
Yeah, it's very hard to make sense of all of the statements that administration officials have been making about this arrangement with Iran. I was about to call it an agreement, but it's not clear that it's even an agreement. I think basically what happened is the administration said there would be a framework agreement in place by the end of March, and they couldn't get it. And what they basically did, as I can infer from all the different papers and statements that have come out, is they stopped the negotiations without an agreement, except that the agreement basically was each party could go out and write down where he thinks we are, which is the reason that you got American statements that didn't agree with Iranian statements, that didn't agree with French statements, that didn't agree with EU statements. So everybody went from this negotiation that did not reach an agreement, and they went out and said, here's where we think the state of the negotiations is now, and it's not even an agreed statement. And then they all agreed that they're going to get back together and continue to talk. And that's basically it, which means that the administration didn't achieve the framework agreement that it claims to have achieved. And anyway, that's just the beginning of the confusion.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. It really, and that means that when they get together again, they're going to have to sit down and iron out all the different interpretations. And we know what Iran's interpretation is. The sanctions get lifted at the beginning. We're never going to give up our nuclear program, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know where we're headed. I do know that yesterday Obama met with Jewish groups, and I had a person who was there. It was off the record, but he did tell me that Obama just believes that Bibi is bad news, especially on the two-state solution. He reiterated that, and he reiterated that he might have to reassess and go to the UN to get the deal done. I can't believe that as he's talking to Jewish leaders to appease them on the Iran deal, he still brings that up and makes that point and drives that home.
Well, I think that President Obama has made some strategic decisions. One of them is he wants to have a strategic partnership with Iran, the key element of which is this deal that essentially legitimates Iran's nuclear program. And he's hoping to build on that to have a cooperative relationship with Iran, perhaps including work together against ISIS. But he thinks that the problems that we have in our relationship with Iran are not a result of hostile ideology in Iran directed against the United States, but are the result of basically bad behavior by the United States over the years that we can now overcome by being nice to the Iranians.
At the expense of Israel.
And the other element of his strategy in the Middle East, another element of his strategy in the Middle East, is he obviously thinks that we should distance ourselves from the Israelis and find ways to create, as he puts it, daylight between the United States and Israel. And that's a policy that he's pursued actually since he came into office in 2009 to one degree or another. It's a policy that's proceeded in fits and starts, and sometimes he's been nicer to Israel and sometimes he's been less nice, but the overall trend has been toward creating a kind of a degree of estrangement between the United States and Israel.
Douglas, you wrote the book, your War and Decision Inside the Pentagon at the Dawn of the War on Terrorism. How do we fight the war on terrorism when Iran is the biggest financer and perpetrator of terrorism in the world, and we're making nice to them and we're forming a strategic alliance with them?
Well, I think I think it does undermine our efforts against terrorism. I think that the Obama administration has rejected from its inception, has rejected the idea that there is a war on terrorism. It's rejected the idea that the terrorist enemies that the United States faces around the world are part of an ideologically driven network.
Right.
It claims that people become terrorists because they're frustrated
can't get a job,
with their
right?
economic situation. And which doesn't jibe with what we know about numerous terrorists who've operated against us, and
including doctors and lawyers and well-to-do
engineers.
Douglas, we're out of time. We'll speak to you soon, and thank you very much for your expertise. And again, folks, the book War and Decision Inside the Pentagon at the Dawn of the War on Terrorism by Doug Feith. Up next, the Malzberg panel.